Let's start off by looking at the possibility that a belief in the afterlife is actually an intrinsic human characteristic. And of course, not everybody believes in the afterlife. We all will have met atheists. You may be an atheist yourself, or somebody who just doesn't really bother to think about it very much. But certainly when we're younger, studies have started to show that there is some sort of innate separation, what we call in this topic dualism or substance dualism, intrinsic to people when they talk about the separation between their mind, i.e., the thoughts, the conscious element of you, something that some people call the soul, and the body. And this is brought out fascinatingly in a study that was conducted a few years ago, which is described here. So essentially, there were some young children aged between 4 and 8, and they were given a puppet show where a puppet of an alligator kills and eats a puppet of a brown mouse. And the scientist speaking to the children said, well, it looks like Brown Mouse got eaten by Mr. Alligator. Brown Mouse is not alive anymore. And the children all accepted this. And when asked questions by the scientists, such as, can the brown mouse run anymore? Can the brown mouse eat? Can the brown mouse breathe? Is its heart beating? All the children obviously knew that the answer to these questions was no, it's no longer able to run. They knew that it was not alive in the sense that its body was no longer functioning, no longer animated. However, while the preschoolers realized that the biological functions had ceased, they believed that the psychological functions continued, for instance, that the mouse would still love its mummy. So this is quite a common thing that we see, and it's not just among children, though it is particularly present within children. Now, with this study, you might say that, well, these children, and they're from Ecuador, were raised with religious backgrounds, and so maybe they'd already been exposed to that kind of thing. But other studies have shown that children in a similar background also believed in some sort of pre-life, life before they were born, their existence before they were born. And this was borne out in questions that revealed that they believed that they had some sort of consciousness. They discussed themselves in the same way that they discussed themselves presently before they were born. Now, what this shows is that, well, um, there is no sort of belief along these lines in the communities that they come from. There's no belief in a pre-life within the Catholic communities of Ecuador. And yet the children still discuss themselves in that sense. So what it possibly demonstrates is that there is an innate belief in a divide between the mind, the soul, the animating entity that we identify as ourselves, and then the body that we inhabit. Um, yes, so indicating some sort of basic belief in substance dualism. And we also see this in similar things. So people tend to discuss victims of comas, so people who are in what we call a vegetative state, where they have no brain function and are completely immobile. When discussing people in permanent vegetative states, people tend to ascribe them fewer faculties, fewer abilities than people tend to describe people who are actually dead. So just think about it in your own life. You may have known somebody who's died now, and you will have heard a phrase like, well, they're looking down at us from heaven now, or they're in a better place now, they're happier now. You don't ever tend to hear that kind of statement in reference to somebody who is brain dead, but their body is still alive. So there is this some sort of idea of a divide that's quite intrinsic just to the way that we imagine things as human beings between us as ourselves in so far as we are consciousnesses, we are brains with minds, and us insofar as we are bodies.